Welcome to 5 and 5 from the One Stop Co-op Shop, where I discuss 5 key elements of a game in about 5 minutes. I'm Michael Kelly, and today I'm looking at the new edition from Stonemaier Games of Libertalia. And disclaimer that I was sent a review copy of this one. Libertalia is a game for 2 to 6 players, and it's really meant for a higher player count. So how well does solo work? Well, let's find out and get to the list. So first at number 5, I've got a full-on pro, which is the accessibility of this game. And this isn't just applying to solo, but in general. I taught it to my 9-year-old very easily. It's a very quick game, even though it has 3 entire rounds and a bunch of card play. The whole thing, once you know how to play, it takes maybe 30 minutes. And my son enjoyed it, my family enjoyed it, and solo isn't really too much tougher. I'll talk about how the actual Automa works a little bit later, but it's really pretty cleanly integrated into the main system. So overall, a very accessible game, I think pretty easy to get to the table. But I have a full-on con for my number 4, my only con for the list, which is the reputation track. So to explain what I mean, you play cards, each of the players every round, and they can have the same numbers, and the order of who goes first or last is very important for these cards. So the reputation track breaks these ties. The idea is that you want to be further to the right generally, so that your card goes later, and then you get better choice of the loot at the end of each turn. That's how it's supposed to work. That's how it's supposed to work. And for that, it's fine. It is a nice tiebreaker. But maybe I'm just misunderstanding something, but almost everything in the game, at least in solo, where ties don't happen very often because it's only you and one of the Automa that you can tie with, so they are very, very rare. It is always better, I've found, in solo to be left on the track. But like so many cards and loot tokens and ability are trying to quote-unquote reward you for going right on the track. So I feel like at least for solo, the reputation track kind of works backwards of how it's intended, which makes some of the card and loot effects not function. But back up to a full-on pro is the Automa. I really like how this works for solo play. This is something that's similar to, I think it was Euphoria, or maybe it was Tapestry. One of the other Stonemaier Automa Factory games had a like kind of 1.5 Automa, and same thing here. You've got like a real Automa that is playing the exact same cards that you do and actually keeping track of score and keeping track of money and using like effects on you and hurting you and stuff. And then you have this kind of fake Automa called the Pilferer. And all they do is basically just draw a random card to mess up the order and maybe like go before you and steal a loot, or maybe mess up the Automa sometimes. And it seems so simple, but for a game that is really best with 3 to 6 players and with more interplay between powers, it's impressive how this just random card draw, this silly pilfer idea, works really well. But I'm back to a mix for my number 2, which is the loot that you're fighting over and the effects the loot has. And a cool thing, a pro for this, is that the loot effects are varied and there are clear signs of like strength and weakness, and the Automa intelligently goes after the better ones. So trying to fight over these loot tokens to get money for the end of the game, that is definitely consistently interesting. But the negative, and the reason that this is a mix for me, is that in the end, I think the loot is too obvious which one is good and bad, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because you want it to be obvious that you want to go first or last in the round because the loot is better or worse. But also I don't find the effects diverse enough frequently, because a lot of them have like secondary effects, but they aren't really ones that you necessarily use very often. So a lot of times it's like this loot is worth 3 money, and this loot is worth 2, and that one's worth 4. And it doesn't often get more interesting than that. Sometimes it does, but not too often. But I just mentioned my number 1, definitely the best thing about the game in the old edition and in the new one, and that's a big pro, the characters and their powers. So basically you get 6 character cards for each round, and every player has the same cards, and these are what you're playing in order with the Automa to try to capture these loot cards and do different effects. But some of them have powers at the beginning of the round and can mess up what other players do. Some of them have powers at the end of the round if you can keep them alive. Some of them keep on giving you recurring powers or penalties, and you want to get rid of them, which some loot cards or other ship cards can do. And this is what really gives the game its legs for multiplayer and for solo, because the puzzle of how to use these cards and trying to like suss out the best time to play them and which ones you want to wait on, because some of them will pay forward to the next round and give you interesting options that the Automa might not have because they already played that card. All that is really interesting and engaging, keeps the game varied and exciting and fun and tense. And again, the Automa works really well with how their cards kind of challenge you, and even with all these diverse effects, it's not that hard to run them. So yeah, I really like this. Definitely the best part of the game. So overall, the big question for Libertalia and my recommendations is, would I get it just for solo? And I'd probably say no, because, I mean, this is obviously really meant for like 3 to 6 players. The 2-player variant is also just okay. But here's the thing, I fully enjoyed my solo plays. I would have no problem sitting down and playing through it again. It's only like 30 minutes. The components are gorgeous. That's definitely in its favor. But still, it's a game that is meant for the chaos of like actual players. And the chaos in solo works pretty well, but I've had more fun with my family than I had solo with it. So it's an awesome add-on. I love that they gave you this bonus. But if you're never going to play this with 3 to 6 players, I'm not sure if it's worth your time. And hey, I can help you figure it out because I do have a full solo playthrough, so you can see if it looks fun to you, see if you can get better strategies than I had with my cards. It's not too hard to do. But in any case, thanks for watching, everybody. Good gaming, and I'll see you at the next stop.